Another film studio lot closed last week in LA. Did you see?
Well, it's understandable. People came to LA a long time ago for vast land, cheap property, and sunshine. Now property is too expensive and there's just too much sun. The same happened to Warner Brothers decades ago.
Wait, so why did the Warner Brothers lot shut down anyway?
There were a couple of reasons. One was the fact that other cities were proposing much more favorable tax breaks to the movie industry, so they left for Atlanta, Montreal, and London.
And then, with the movie industry transitioning to digital filmmaking tools, such as LED screens, which require fewer props, they no longer needed ground access for huge set constructions. The few new studios that Warner Brothers did then build started being stacked vertically instead.
So what happened to the original lot?
After the Warner Brothers lot became a historic landmark, it was only possible to build between the walls, which used to be the driveways connecting all the studios. So they ended up removing all the roofs from the containers and turning them into outdoor space.
Oh, I've been there. They basically reused old props to make all these theme spaces. One of the courtyards used the fake Brooklyn facade from old movies and contrast them with the foreign desert-like landscape. Pretty surreal.
My favorite one is actually them disguising all the existing walls with printed fabric that they used as a backdrop in the beginning of movie making. I went to see a comedy show there and it was totally unreal.
The studios just occupied so much land in LA. Given the size, these studios obstructed the movement of the city a lot. In places like Burbank and Culver City, you had to walk down long city blocks to navigate around them. Now you can move between the buildings, from courtyard to courtyard, each with its own distinct identity.
Did you go to the IKEA there?
What? There's an IKEA there? I've only seen the small shops that I crossed through to get to the other courtyards.
Yeah, it's in the basement, but because they were only allowed to build in between the walls, they ended up having a lot of dark spaces, which is perfect for the big box stores like IKEA, Home Depot, and a Walmart. But those stores are pretty weird here. They are distributed linearly, as long and skinny bars. So you enter through one end and exit through another. No more maze and aisles.
Still don't totally understand how across 110 acres of land, only the spaces between the old buildings are being used. Is that really worth historic preservation?
That's not really true. Those are the spaces where retail is located, but the courtyards are being put to use as parks and recreational spaces. The project inverted private and public space to address the city's need for green public areas.
Also, as an Angelino, I'm personally relieved that the studios weren't torn down. They're a huge part of LA's cultural heritage, and if those walls are protected, then the only option was really to occupy the narrowness in between.
I mean, it shows how to densify LA without losing its identity. It goes back to when ADUs were introduced, finding pockets of open space that could be used to build affordable units. In this case, that's why the residential component is located above the elevated promenade.
Oh, is that what's in those weird roofs?
Well, when Warner Brothers sold their lot, there was public pressure to add a residential component to it. Given that existing studio walls were preserved with little access to natural light, they proposed to create the cinematographic skyline, hovering above, packed with housing.
Okay, but why does it have to be so shiny?
Those roofs are actually one of the few projects that has been able to use solar shingles as the primary envelope system. Believe it or not, it's the largest application of the shingles on a housing project in California to date. Their huge mass also begins to act as a shading strategy for the courtyards.
I just find it odd that the site claims to be historically preserved when you can no longer see any of the existing walls that are clad with various sets. And on top of that, also have these strange roofs floating above it.
I think that's an outdated idea of preservation. We don't have to idealize and conserve a building in its original state to pay respect to it and learn from it. If anything, recycling the existing props and displaying them in their original studio lot is more of an homage than just displaying the stucco structure. It's about understanding the scale of the studio containers and how much space was required to make these movies to begin with.
I agree. It is both a huge plot of land that should help combat densification and a historical site that led to LA's Hollywood culture. At the end of the day, it's more about what to do with the relocated industry, and then exploring the opportunity to create experiential public spaces in a city that lacks access to the outdoor and shared spaces.